In our third example, we are going to move on to two sets of brackets. So x plus 3 multiplied with x minus 4. What we want to do is multiply everything in the bracket on the left with everything in the bracket on the right. We have done this in grade 8, but this one is going to be used for revision. So let's start with this x. We are going to multiply this x with everything in the bracket on the right. So that means I will have x multiplied with x, and then a positive x times a negative 4, so it'll be negative x multiplied with 4, and that is now this x being multiplied with everything in the bracket on the right. Now that I'm done with the x, I can move on to the 3. So I multiply the 3 with x and the 3 with negative 4. So if I want to write it out, it's a positive number multiplied with a positive number, so it's plus 3 times x, and then a positive multiplied with a negative, so it's negative 3 times 4. What we normally don't write it out like this, we immediately simplify it when we multiply. So x times x is 2x's, so it's x squared. Negative x times 4, we write the number in front of the variable, so it's negative 4x. Plus 3 times x, so it'll be plus 3x. And negative 3 times 4, which is negative 12. Now there is no other x squared, so I have no like terms next to the x squared, and I have no like terms with the constant value. But these two terms in the middle are considered like terms. So it's negative 4x plus 3x. I can add them together because they have the same variable and the same exponent of 1. So negative 4 plus 3 is negative x. And that is our final answer. Now, let's do that same example again, but let's apply mental maths. So I'm multiplying the x with the x and the x with negative 4. So x times x becomes x squared. And x times negative 4 will be negative 4x. And then 3 times x and 3 times negative 4. So that'll be plus 3x, and then 3 times negative 4 is negative 12. And now we can add up the like terms. So it's x squared minus x minus 12. It is the same solution as before, but instead of writing out the multiplication, we do it mentally. This allows us to save time and to avoid confusion. In our fourth example, we have 2x plus 3y multiplied with 4x minus 5y. The same counts as the previous example. We multiply everything in the bracket on the left with everything in the bracket on the right. So we will have 2x multiplied with 4x and 2x multiplied with negative 5, which will give us 2x times 4x. 2 times 4 is 8. X times x, because we're multiplying the same base, we add up the exponent of 1, so we have x squared. and then 2x times negative 5. 2 multiplied with negative 5 is negative 10. X is now multiplied with y, and we have two different variables, so we write them next to each other. We don't say xy square. We simply say x times y. We cannot add up these exponents because the variables are not the same. Now that I've multiplied 2x with everything in that bracket, I move on to the 3y. So it will be 3y times 4x. So 3 times 4 will give us 12. And again, we have an x and a y as our variables. The same counts as with the negative 10xy. And the way we write the variables is in alphabetic order. Even though the y is first times the x, we always write them in alphabetical order. This allows us to see like terms easier. The last one is 3 times negative 5. So it's negative 15. And we have y with a y, and that is 2 y's. And all that we need to do now is add up the like terms. There are no other x squares in the expression, so it's 8x squared, and there is no other y squares in the expression. But these like terms can be added together. So it's negative 10xy plus 12xy, which will give us positive 2xy. We do not change the variable, we simply add or subtract the coefficients from each other. In our last example for today, we have negative 2t minus a quarter p multiplied with 3q minus 1 over 5t. The same counts as before. We multiply everything with the bracket in the left with everything in the bracket on the right. So, we have negative 2t times 3q and negative 2t multiplied with negative 1 over 5t. So negative 2t times 3q, negative 2 times 3 will give us negative 6. And then t times q will give us qt. Remember, we write the variables in alphabetical order, and we cannot add up the exponents because they are different variables. Now we have a negative 2t times negative 1 over 5t. A negative times a negative will give us a positive. 2 times 1 over 5 is 2 over 5. T times t. Now because the variable is the same, we can say that becomes t squared. Now we have multiplied negative 2t with everything in the bracket on the right. We can move on to the negative a quarter p. So negative a quarter p times 3q. So negative multiplied with a positive, so the value is negative. Then 1 quarter times 3 is 3 quarters. And then we have two different variables and we write them in alphabetical order next to each other. We cannot add the exponents because the variables are not the same. Now we have a negative a quarter p times negative a fifth t. Negative multiplied with a negative will give us a positive. Multiplying out the fractions, please remember what we learned in grade 8. So we multiply the numerators together, 1 times 1, which will give us 1 over, and we multiply the denominators with each other. So 4 times 5, which is 20. And we then have the variables left. There are different variables, so we do not add up the exponents. We simply say p times t. So in our multiplying out, we don't have any like terms, meaning we cannot add any of the terms with each other. And because we can't go any further, we simply stop there, and that's our final answer.